Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Passive House Canada Conference. We're so glad to have you with us this morning. I'm Rebecca Sorbera, and I am with the Passive House Canada Board of Directors. I will be one of your facilitators today, and we will get started with our first session, Passive House Low Carbon Rapid Construction, an all-in partner to affordable housing and the housing crisis. Our speakers today are Maureen Sanchez with RDH Building Science, Matt Bolin with McCollum Sather, and Peter Vanderklip with CityHousing Hamilton. For our online audience, if you have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A chat. Click or tap the chat button on the bottom toolbar. For those joining us in person, we have a microphone set up over to, I think they will pass it out at the end, for questions after the session. So please line up and ask your questions there if we have time at the session after the session for a Q&A. I will now hand it over to Maureen to get us started.
Actually, Matt.
Oh, sorry, to Matt.
Nope. Good? Okay. Great. Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Good morning, everyone. We are going to start off today, and I'm just going to skip next slide. So in addition to that intro, I just wanted to start out myself. I'm an architect, but I have to say I'm feeling a lot more like a prodigal son today here. I was 10 years ago, I think, 10, 11 years ago, I did my Passive House training and examination here in Ottawa. And then for 10 years, I have not worked on a single Passive House project until this project that we're going to talk about today. And I credit a lot of that to the two individuals here sitting beside me for making that possible. I think we have a really interesting perspective that we're bringing to today's conversation from a client, from an ownership and operator standpoint, from myself through the architect and the design standpoint, and then obviously, I'm sure most of you probably know Maureen from the Passive House and the consultant standpoint, and that bringing that expertise to the table, and how key it is to have all of those things. Yeah. Ooh. No problem. So just to give a bit of an overview of what we are going to look at today, there's really four main components to the talk. The first is going to be the current context, which again, might for a lot of you be things you know. I think there's a lot of probably preaching to the choir at this week's events. But I think it is important to ground that specifically through our perspectives of how we are approaching the current context. Second, we're going to look at just our journey in terms of getting to the point of getting to this project that we were all very fortunate to be able to work on and now be very close to completing, as you'll see at the end of the presentation. Third, we're going to talk about partnerships and lessons learned, and that is obviously so important to have that feedback loop on not only the lessons or the specific details or connections or materials or things that you learn, but more importantly, the feedback on just building and maintaining those relationships and the expertise that goes along, just like you're going to see here between the three of us. And then finally, we're just going to have some of our individual takeaways briefly listed out, and hopefully we get some time for some good Q&A. So Peter, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thanks, Matt. So yeah, I'm Peter Vanderklip, Manager of Development at CityHousing Hamilton. So just going to talk a little bit of the housing needs context, specifically is tied to affordable housing. So as you all know and probably have seen in almost every city here in Canada, the need is there, right? Like there's encampments often are almost commonplace, especially where I'm from Hamilton. But the need is also increasing in quantity, but also in intensity. It's not just the same level of need that's out there, it's sometimes even more intense need. And the problem that we've had for a while is the help for people has been stagnant or increasing too slow for decades. So things like disability, ODSP, minimum wage, rent subsidies, not to say that these things haven't moved, but if you look at a chart of like rents versus ODSP housing allotment, it's just getting further and further apart. And minimum wage and so on and so forth. I often think you look at the average family income in a city, you look at the average rent, you do 30% of that, it's almost unaffordable across our country. So we need to build more affordable housing. There's also a real push to spend money on the symptoms, kind of like the short-term things like security, encampment evictions, emergency services. These are all the things that happen immediately when you have the health crises, the mental health crises, other things. And as as somebody who lives in a city and things, I do not want to have encampments in my park either. I want them to be cleaned up. So there's often a real push for investing in that instead of investing in the potentially in the solution to the problem, or a solution to the problem. In terms of the capital side of things, we often, when we're looking at this and we're looking at the cost of construction, we do need levels of subsidy. I've just been thinking about the presentation we had this morning about this. I do feel that this is a high productivity thing, but I mean, it is also a service, affordable housing. Don't want to compare it to just like strictly garbage or water or things like that, but it's a service we provide to our communities to help those the most in need. And so all affordable housing developers that I know of who've built anything are trying to build more, but typically it's a funding problem. It's trying to figure out how to get the math to work, how to get enough funding programs in, and to balance those pro formas, figure out with the rents that we're able to charge and still service the market, how we afford the mortgages and things that we need for these buildings. One thing that's really important for affordable housing is usually is passive house. Like we've adopted it as our standard for all of our buildings. And partially that is the total cost of the building for the long term. We know that we are going to be providing affordable housing in 50 years from now, in 100 years from now. So if we can invest in the envelope of the building, we can deliver affordable housing better in year 50, year 20, year whatever. And I think also the missing middle thing, and that's kind of where this project that we're going to talk about hits more, is there's a lot of, there is a lot of sprawl in our cities. And one of the best ways to kind of like deal with that or slowly increase is to build something in the missing middle. Build something that's 4 to 6 stories that can often fit in on a main urban street potentially in a subdivision or in a less dense neighborhood. And it has a more gradual density than just building a tower in the middle of nowhere. So CityHousing Hamilton, a little bit more on us. So we're one of the local housing corporations here in Ontario. So it was decades ago, the province actually owned a huge amount of affordable housing in the province, but they downloaded that to the relevant cities. So we are technically the 3rd largest local housing corporation here in Ottawa. Is the number 2, and Toronto is obviously number 1. We have 7,100 units, 13,000 tenants, which changes all the time. And we have every type of building. We have a building that is 550 units in a whole city block. We've got a whole bunch of towers that are 250, 300 units each, 100 units each. We have mid-rise buildings. We have townhouse complexes, and we even have single-family homes. We have like maybe single-family and semi-detached homes, a couple hundred of those in the city of Hamilton.
You've just heard Peter talking about requesting passive house for every building that they do. This is not something that CHH is doing separately. When we look at it nationally, I just took the national building code in front of you. You can see the evolution. What CHH is doing is just being a bit ahead of the curve. But if you go back to NECB, you see that 2020 issues has tightening performance requirements. 2025, which just came out, has now absolute targets for some key typologies, which is helping us compare buildings like for like and really start bringing the performance, improve on the performance. And then 2030, which the cycle for writing this code has already started. And, I have my fingers in a few things, and I can tell you that they're already thinking about tightening the absolute targets on the key metrics that have already come out, as well as, and I'm pretty happy to say that, the introduction of embodied carbon, which is great. So this is what you're starting to see. So this is really a national level to really illustrate that Peter's journey is, and CHH's journey is not completely remote from where the industry is heading. And then if I pare it down to a more local look, Hamilton declared their their climate emergency 6 years ago already. They have several documents. They've more or less split their entire approach into 2 documents between mitigation and adaptation, which is great. And then, of course, the overarching goal is net zero for the city by 2050, which is very aligned with what you've seen other municipalities do. But when you break it down back to the buildings, it still means that for all municipal buildings, they will be net zero by 2050. They have actually pretty stringent interim targets. And then they're saying that all their buildings will be retrofitted to, again, high performance levels. So when we look at 2050 anyway, as the end goal, you can see that the buildings we're delivering today, like 1620 Main in 2025, that building will be there by 2050, right? We're not even close to its lifetime by that time. So really that context is really important to keep in mind now so that we don't have to retrofit or new build in a few years. And now that you've seen all the context, what we were trying to come through with McCallum Saver is seeing how the industry rise to that challenge, right? And the truth is, as design consultants, we can bring together collaborative teams that have expertise so that we can deliver buildings that are efficient, accessible, and affordable, right? And so when you add to that the rapid delivery, there has been maybe not a myth, but like a preconception that maybe rapid housing might be like cutting corners. But the truth is, it's just making smarter choices from day one. You'll see that there's a lot of alignment. I won't spoil the future slides. We talk a lot about that. And as a key typology, the 4 to 6 story mass timber passive house rapid construction building is really a direct answer to the municipality needs. Why? It's net zero ready from day one. It's prefab, so that helps on the quality and the speed of everything. It's replicable, which Peter will talk more about this. And not to be forgotten, but Passive House is not in there for celebrating the STEM per se, but it's more as a very proven and robust framework to deliver on the co-benefits, because at the core of it are the community-focused outcomes. Okay.
So just to add a couple notes here to this slide from that consultant perspective, specifically for any of the architects in the room. When I was saying in the beginning that it's been 10 years since I got licensed, or since I did the training for Passive House, and it took me 10 years to get there. That wasn't a wasted 10 years. And of course, I would have liked to have done one sooner, but really what that time was spent, and I think for a lot of us, there is a lot of time that needs to be spent just understanding conventional ways of building. That's a big task right there, just understanding the systems, the players involved, and how all that works. So our strategy has been to actually obtain a really deep understanding that, so that we can't be marginalized or stigmatized. And then within that understanding of the conventional, actually look for opportunities and look for aligned, like-minded collaborators, and look for opportunities where innovation and high performance design and sustainability measures can actually help to solve some of those problems. And again, if you can put together that team who is aligned and motivated by the same things, in terms of ownership and operations and overall objectives, it actually becomes possible, and it's been really great to steer towards that. So, moving on, next slide. In terms of our journey to get there, we wanted to put up a graphic, and these 3 rows represent, I guess, each of our collective experience over the past number of years, getting to the point of being able to do the project that we're specifically going to focus on in Hamilton at 1620 Main for CityHousing Hamilton. So the top row is, we're going to go through, again, Peter and CityHousing Hamilton's experience. Then we'll walk through Marine and RDH experience, and then some of our experience at the bottom, and then pull it together.
Oh, sorry, I was doing that for you, Matt.
Okay, so now I'll go Peter.
Perfect. We've got a couple different people running the clicker here. We apologize.
Fighting for the remote.
It's okay. So I'm going to talk briefly just about these 5 projects that kind of led us to here. This isn't actually all of our projects. There's at least 1, maybe 2 more that we haven't done, but the one wasn't Passive House certified, so I'm not bringing it up, or it wasn't quite the same. So the big one, and what was kind of nice is actually downstairs at Duro Rock has a picture of it, is the 500 McNabb, or what's called the Ken Sobel Tower, kind of called both. This was our first big project. We had a building that had fallen into a poor state of repair due to underinvestment in the existing building, and so we had vacated it at the time. And so they were looking at the idea of demolishing it or rebuilding it new or relocating or selling it, and we decided to do an EnerFit certified Passive House deep energy retrofit to the project. So it was a very big project for us. It would involve like cutting the balconies off the building, new cladding on the outside, passive house windows, and a fuel switch to go from a natural gas to that. Through that, it was a little bit of a rocky project and things like that, as often your first passive house project is. But it's a great building now in our community, and it's performing quite well. The second one there is 257 King William Street. So this was in response to the first round of rapid housing funding here in Canada. So it was volumetric modular. That was a requirement of that round of financing. You needed to do some level of modularity. And so it was an underutilized city parking lot that the city decided to surplus and give to us. And so we were able to build this 24-unit building there through that. It was also Passive House certified, so we kind of layered that on top of the volumetric modular building structure. One thing we did do on there is the modules came without cladding on them, so we did all the envelope stuff, kind of like the air sealing and the insulation after it was dropped on site. 8 Roxanne Drive, this building is a partnership with the developer. So we had a townhouse site that, again, had fallen into a state of poor repair due to poor investment, possibly not enough money going into it. But what we were able to do is to look at the site, and it was all like a 1 or 2 story townhouse complex, and leverage the value of that land, sell the majority of it to a developer, and use that to help fund this new building. So we basically started with 100 units, and we ended with 100 units, but we turned it into a brand new building. This one is not Passive House certified, but it's designed to Passive House principles. It's a precast concrete building, and all the exterior panels were built prefabricated in the factory with the windows installed in the factory. Really just, they got delivered to site, you caulk the panels together, and your envelope is done. So otherwise traditional construction inside. The last two kind of happened at the same time, 106 Bay Street North and 55 Queenston. 106 Bay Street North was another surplus parking lot in the city, and 55 Queenston was a previous, there was a building called the City Motor Hotel that the city decided was not a valued asset to the city, and they expropriated it, and then we were able to get that piece of land for that. So we designed these kind of concurrently, but with 2 different architects, design, bid, build, and went full Passive House certified. The one's 55 units, the other one's 40 units. And very great buildings, both with solar on them. So between all these, like this is 368 units total that we've done in the city of Hamilton. So and it's if I was running rough numbers, I couldn't get the final, but it's over $100 million that we've invested into these buildings in terms of Passive House approach and into affordable housing. So I'll hand it off.
Okay, so the RDH journey, so slightly different, but you'll see some similar themes. The first one on the left is Chilliwack supportive housing. So this is more BC-centric, but you'll see that we started playing a lot with high performance, so not quite passive house, but high performance and modular. So this is a kind of key typology that we did over and over and over again to, more or less get our chops on modular construction and doing, getting the lessons learned and seeing how we can do it better. Another flavor, 71 Main Street, which is actually in Hamilton, so we're back to this side. Passive house, a bit of prefab, but different, so precast, okay? Not modular this time, but precast. So we're talking about factory construction for all of the prefab concrete structure as well as all of the facade, okay? Prefab insulated concrete panels. All electric as well, so you can see that the climate theme is still in there. Then all of these were like small mid-rise to middle mid-rise, I would say, going all the way, I want to say, to like 60, 80 units. Then we tried the very, very big. So this is UTSC that you see in the middle for the University of Toronto. This is their first passive house student res on the Scarborough campus. So we're talking 800 beds, commercial kitchens, lots of non-residential spaces as well. So very, very big. Passive house for sure, design build that taught us a bit as well as to how to work with that contracting approach. All electric, but still site build. Okay, so no prefab on that one. Then you see that we went, again, some of these are, of course, rolling in parallel. Bella Bella, we're back to British Columbia, and we're now partnering modular with Passive House construction, okay? So we've learned enough to now get the performance all the way to the, to the top level, to Passive House. This was also in remote communities, so we learned, an extra layer there into delivering in communities where the skills might not be there to deliver these buildings. And then you'll see another trial, which is again a typology for several projects that we have ongoing. 1766 Francis Street in Vancouver is a passive house. You can see the theme, but prefabricated mass timber, again, both structure as well as the facade using mass timber. Okay, so starting to partner different flavors between prefab, mass timber, precast, passive house, modular, and just doing it better and better, like making it more streamlined.
Great. So you can see the 5 projects that we have up from our side. What was really great actually is when we put all these projects together individually, you start to see how they all are woven together with different perspectives and experiences, but all along the same threads. And a lot of the themes, even with our infographics here of the green tags, start to reinforce that. For us, one of the first and key projects for us from a mass timber perspective, and I've seen some familiar faces here from some of the mass timber conferences, and there's obviously a bit of a cross-pollination here with this group, so it is nice to be here in that context. But there was a project we had back in 2018 where we were actually able to get an NRCan GC Wood grant to do a series of physical testing, mock-ups, bringing together a lot of expertise in terms of engineering, in terms of fabrication partners, and there was a huge amount of energy that went and success that went into it, although that project didn't get built. It was scheduled to start construction as a spec office building, I think a week or two away from COVID, and so that obviously changed the work from home model a lot and turned that whole industry a little bit upside down. But that said, that work that had been done to build the expertise and to build the connections and all those, again, like-minded, aligned collaborators was there and off of that. Around the same time, we were also looking out at volumetric modular, which we were really interested in, and again, found some connections. And so we actually able to execute a very small project, but it was the first project off the line from a manufacturing facility that was doing full modular chassis out of a plant. So the 710 Frederick ADU project was actually something that finished boxes came to site, craned over top of a building. So we were able to gain some really valuable insight into that, into the volumetric modular process, which is not easy. It has lots of challenges that we can get into some other time perhaps. But what those 2 projects specifically set up for us was the project in the middle, which is the 1470 block line. And that was, as Peter had mentioned, it was round 1 of the Rapid Housing Initiative. But what was really interesting and special about that project is those 2 previous projects, along with some other work we'd done, conventional projects in the supportive housing and affordable housing space, all came together for this opportunity where we were able to both execute a mass timber with a rapid delivery, with a very specific delivery method of this design build team that we'll talk about a bit. And we were able to push on all the boundaries that we could. So we couldn't get it to passive house or push that far at that time, especially given the timeline and some of the budget restraints. But what we were able to do was utilize the definition of prefabricated mass timber components off-site as our as our modular definition. So we checked that box. We were able to do a full electric solution, which was critically important to us in terms of, from a design perspective, driving that as part of the design build team with the consultants, knowing how important that was to that future adaptation and conversion into a fully net zero building. And again, that design build piece was key there. The next 2 projects that are listed here, and again, I think we all probably could have put more and more projects on that we're excited about or could talk about. We've got some projects in remote communities in the north as well that, again, we're really excited about in terms of our next steps. But these 2 that I put here, which was the York Region project and then 1480 block line, we're really just testing this as a repeatable prototype. So what you have here is actually the York Region project was, I believe, still round 1 of the Rapid Housing funding, but just a few months behind. So we had aligned through some of our discussions with another Toronto GTA-based developer builder on alternative solutions in the building code that we were able to piggyback on, started to form that relationship and realized there was ways that we could take what we'd done in Kitchener and apply it to this other user in York Region. Different user, different sort of use case, but we were able to really easily manipulate and apply those prefabricated systems into that next building. And then the 1480 block line was actually similar to some of the other projects we've heard about in Hamilton and other places, vacant land owned by the city, who then had another parse adjacent that we were able to build a second building on, which again was testing out an adaptation. So instead of a 4-story, 1-bedroom unit, the second building was a 3-story, 2-bedroom unit. And it was all the same system, all the same delivery method. But I think specifically those 3 projects stacked up created a really stable basis of understanding and execution. Like we had proven out that we could execute this system, fast-tracked, mass timber, so low carbon, and a fully electric solution, such that when we got to the next phase and in CityHousing Hamilton being able to tour the building, talk to us, and move things forward, we were able to move to what was the alignment of all these, as you can see here, yep, on the next slide, thank you, Peter, changing the wrong slide deck, in the 1620 Main project. So what you can see here, an exciting thing about this project, this is on the same site of the last project that Peter mentioned. I know Henry's in the audience here, who's worked on that project and is a real Passive House champion. And I think just as a quick call out, it shows that even though we had a different design build team to execute this project that we've been working on, the collaboration on the site between the 2 projects really reinforced these things that we're talking about alignment of not just owners and operators, but consultants and actual builders. It's been a really rewarding experience going through it. And that's really horrible hearing your voice come back like that.
You sound great, Matt. So we're going to talk a little bit just here about this project in particular, just the first step of it. So this is, I think, RHI round 3 is kind of what triggered this one. There was still some requirement for modularity, or at least definitely the main criteria was how fast we could get this together. And we at City Housing had heard through the City of Hamilton that there was an opportunity to potentially get the majority of this funding that was aligned for Hamilton. And we had, as part of the 55 Queenston, that's the first phase on the site, the project built by Skill Tice, we had identified on there a little square saying future phase 2. And I had fully expected when that was done that we would, be waiting until now to start that project. But we heard about this, we heard about the funding, we thought, hey, maybe there's an opportunity here. We can go out with a design build RFP and turn this around quick and submit something to the federal government through the city for this. So very aggressive timeline, need for rapid methods of construction. We did an invitational procurement to just three different parties, each one tied to a different kind of modular, either panelized or full volumetric solution. And we said that the building needed to be completed for August 2024. We didn't quite hit that. I'll get into it, but that's what we said at the time. And we did design build because we wanted the clarity around the price and the design responsibility. There was a lot of stuff in the funding agreement that made us fully responsible for any budget overages. So we're like, well, we'll just hand that on to a design builder. And we tried to do through the RFP to be clear as possible, because I knew with a fast track construction project and design build, I preferred to be clear about everything and not to be like ambiguous, because when you get presented with a change, it's so much easier if you just can clearly show that the general contractor did not include for this, and just you do need to have the budget to do that, but I'll get into that a little later. The other thing we did through the RFP is it was invitational. We did a ranked evaluation. Because it was invitational, we actually literally ranked every proponent on every aspect. We said, you're first, you're second, you're third. First got all the points, second got like 50% of the points, and third got 0% for each of the criteria to help spread apart the scores. A lot of these RFPs I've evaluated before, the scores are like one person's got 83, the other has got 84, and the other one's got 85. And you're like, well, what was my evaluation for? Everything's falling within 3 points of each other. And we knew we would be fully happy to award to any of the 3 parties. We knew that all 3 parties could have done this. We also included the Passive House thing, and we specifically said certification. Some people are like kind of scared about doing that, but we felt that actually put a huge hammer in terms of like requirements on the design, we could be silent about so many things in our owner statement or requirements because we said it was Passive House certified. We just knew that to hit the certification, they needed to do that. So I think I'll leave it there.
Before you do that, can you go back to the previous slide? I want you to talk a little bit about the fixed fee.
Oh, yes. And the one other thing on the evaluation. We told them what the price was going to be. So instead of actually saying lowest price wins, we said most units win. So we knew we had a fixed funding budget. We knew it was better for us to get more units. It actually wasn't in our best interest to actually come in under budget. We're funded by a federal funding program. So we said we needed at least this many units. And we said each proprietor came back, and they all came back with slightly different number of units. And it was actually the one who was able to, through the cost effectiveness of their approach, be able to get at the project. So that was something we did there as well. Again, it was an invitational thing. We knew all three parties had the capabilities and to do this. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so, just a little thing, but that kind of threw us off a little bit because I don't think any of us had, I know in my company we hadn't seen an RFP set up this way. It's like, what do you mean the price is fixed and you're either complying and under or non-compliant and just move on? So how did we approach that? The more I hear about it, the more I feel like it's a miracle that it kind of all came together, but I think we didn't have time to think about it, which is why we just rose to the challenge. So what were we faced with and how did we approach that? We had about 8 weeks from start, and Matt, I'm speaking for you, I think there was a blank piece of paper that was like the design, or a rectangle, sorry, all the way to 100% SD plus Class C costing. Okay, so how do we approach that? You have no time for modeling. Passive House requires energy modeling, so we had to go from expertise and experience. And so we worked so hard on the design for about 4 weeks, I want to say. But then you've heard what Peter said. It's not about how much will it cost, it's how many units can we do. So then we were doing the pricing and procurement right after, but we've asked them several options to figure out how far we can range an option until it would not be viable anymore, right? And then that informed the design back. So more or less we had 8 weeks to do all of that while all the pieces were all moving all at the same time, right? Okay, so easy. How did we do that? The reoccurring partnership, Matt later on will present the team that was there, and even before we were this team, every single member had experience with most of the others, right? So we had that experience together, and then we took the successful project under the RHI round 2, which Matt presented, as the starting point for round 3. It is mass timber, so we stuck with that, both for the structure and the facade. And for the systems as well, which includes mass timber, we had a clear understanding from round 2 as to how these systems are performing and what are their limitations. So then, moving on to the new variable we added onto that project, which is Passive House. So Peter described it as, a nice hammer that was right there so that the spec section would be really short. I had to be, the very gentle hammering away. And so what I had to do is literally translate this project will be a certified Passive House project into all of the spec sections for the team in 4 weeks. That is probably the best crash course I've ever given. Matt, you'll let us know. And the whole point is that was successful only because of past relationships and the trust that we had put together. And so when we looked at what we had for round 2, with the layer of Passive House levels of performance, we could simply say, can we keep this? Yes or no. If we can't keep it, can we keep the approach and improve a little bit on the performance, or are we literally saying this system is not going to deliver, we have to switch and move on? Again, then the pricing was kind of, fun and tricky at the same time. No time, so direct product procurement. I see Euroline sitting here. They've been a key partner in this project. We didn't have time to go shopping around everywhere, so when we were starting with a product, we were moving through it as soon as possible. And then that pricing, which is kind of like not just one price, but tell me how much it costs for 4 stories, 5 stories, 6 stories with mass timber. Tell me, if I buy this ERV, how far can you stretch it? Because the whole point is we knew the minimum set in the RFP. The maximum was set by the system limitations. And then we had to fine-tune absolutely every single lever to not go past the gap where we would have to pay a lot more money to stay with the system, to then say to Peter, this is the best value we can give you in terms of units for a Passive House certified building fitting the RFP requirements. And so the pricing and the design for 8 weeks were just running, 200 miles an hour with a constant feedback loop where it's a chicken and the egg situation. So it was kind of fun, but we somehow made it through. And again, reiterating success really on the experiences that we shared with you, as well as just an enhanced communication. Like everybody took extra care to be extra clear and solution-oriented, to really have so much trust and collaboration that this has been one of the, as much as it is crazy when you think about it, it has been one of the best experiences of design I've had.
Yeah, I would agree, and in a lot of ways, I do feel like I sort of cheated the system by bringing in Marine for this process, because I don't see any possible way we would have got through it successfully otherwise. And it should be noted too that the builder here was that we had done these previous projects with. When we did our first mass timber project, they had never done mass timber, and when we did this first Passive House project, they'd never done Passive House. So having this expertise and having this, again, collaborative network has been so key. Just high level in terms of what we were ultimately able to come to the table with. It was a 6-story mass timber structure, so fully actually CLT for any of you mass timber enthusiasts out there, walls and floors, which again we can get into. 41 units. They were compact units, and again, a lot of these things, the work had already been done on these other projects that we were repeating. So the key here too was, and I think the message generally is, particularly for the designers and the consultants trying to push these projects forward, is coming to the table when these opportunities strike, and especially now, and I think they're going to continue very fast and furious with funding opportunities for these groups that so desperately need the funding and then need to very quickly turn around and execute on it. The imperative for what we call as our call to action is for us to be able to have executable designs that are ready, that we know how to get done, that we're not, spending, the squeeze we're all feeling in terms of technology's advancement from, digitization of drawing up to now what we're going to get into with AI, which is going to create the hockey stick. I think we can probably all appreciate. It's so important for us to understand the designs that we do, the way that they can be fast-tracked and be fabricated and executed. So that's what we were able to come to the table with here based on these other projects that we were able to stack up, and then simply stack someone with Marine's expertise and her team to be able to help us not just in that design phase, but actually all the way through as we've now had to strive to actually execute on this promise that we made.
I'm going to fill in one thing, if you go back. The schedule there, that's what was promised. That's what we told them we needed to do in the RFP. That isn't exactly what we hit. So we'll go into the exact, it's still extremely fast, but just to clarify there.
I was going to glaze over that, but sure. Okay.
Yeah.
No, we can get into that. This is just a quick slide that just shows the structure. And one of the things about these designs and understanding how they're going to be executed, it's important for us as again, the design team to actually understand that structure. And that could be, and we've worked in many different ones, and I think the key, someone like Peter at the table in CHH, they actually understood what the different delivery systems were and what was going to work for them based on their objectives. That is such an important thing that I think we can help educate clients on in terms of what is the best tool. But I mean, we've worked in this, what we like to refer to as our design-led design build, designer-led design build, but it is just a CCDC 14. So very standard document, very sort of cut and dry, black and white, similar to the CCDC 2, but it does offer this opportunity for this really intensive collaboration of not just the design team, but the actual construction team as well. And that's why it has worked so successfully and why you're starting to see that. This contractually works pretty well. We're seeing, the progressive design build. We're working in IPD. We're working in CM models as well as fixed price models now. And it is just finding the right fit for the project. But it's so essential. I think the important thing that we always stress is the contract isn't what's going to do it for you. It's the people that are standing behind the contract that have the motivation, that have the trust that you can build with those individuals is really the essential part.
Did you want to hit the first two?
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. So now that we've talked about the pursuit stage and what we promised, we're going to dig a tiny bit into what happened when we were delivering it. And so at the core, you'll see a few themes coming out, but it's still, we were able to be successful because of reoccurring partnerships and because of the clarity of outcomes, which allowed us to all be aligned, right? And the trust that we had built together. I can't reiterate that enough because every single issue we were presented with got resolved that way. So first theme, communications and clarity. Like it's not location, it's communication. Okay, first thing first, we have a TEDI target for Passive House. I didn't have to say any more. I just said to the mechanical engineer, the ventilation system is not quite cutting it. We need to upgrade. End of discussion. Yes, we're upgrading. The targets are there. No need to do anything. The EUI, and TEDI is the space heating demand. Sorry, I'm just being a bit. The EUI, the energy use intensity, which is your total energy demand, is also set through the metrics with Passive House. And this was also, I don't want to say a 5-minute discussion. Matt, you keep me in check here, but the mechanical designer was like, okay, so you want it all electric because it's better from a carbon standpoint. You want to use as little energy as possible, so we're going with heat pump. And if ever you have a central circulating loop that keeps wasting energy all the time, that just penalizes you. I was like, yes. It's like, okay, I will give you in-suite heat pump water heaters. Are we good? And I was like, yes, we're good. And that was the end of it, which is pretty fast.
It was the 11th hour too, so we were trying to submit something, so we were out of time.
And that is just because of the clarity that we had, which allowed us to be aligned and make the best decisions for that project.
So I'll talk a little bit more about, and I kind of hinted at this before, is I did try to, when we're crafting the RFP, is to be very clear on what's included, what's excluded. Because I feel like sometimes it's almost better to be more clear about what you're excluding, like what things they weren't carrying, because then you can get refined prices. These can work against you as an owner, though. So the one example we have is the contaminated soil. I should not have said that the soil was clean in my RFP. I should have instead see these environmental reports. So we did end up having I've learned through this process that there's clean soil and there's clean soil, and there's soil that's clean enough to do like a 1-story building with no basement, and then there's soil that's clean enough to do a basement and all these other things. So we did identify this. Malou Blamey came to me and was like, I think we're going to have to pay quite a bit extra to get this done in time, because we also had schedule pressures by the time we realized this. And I quickly tried to pivot to go, well, I think you're right. I think I'm going to have to pay for this. How cheaply can we do this? What's the cheapest way we can do it? And it was just really nice to see the contractor kind of go, oh, okay, I'm not going to have to try and eat $300,000, because it did end up being about that much, and work it out. So this was, again, in one way, not really great for my budget, but I did try and be pessimistic at the beginning and have some ability to do that. And I really try to do that. Investigate the changes based on merit, not just fight the general contractor on it as a matter of principle, as some people do. And that kind of came up with the CLT panel storage as well. Same thing, one of the delays we had during the project was the building permit was delayed. And they had clearly indicated to us, to make our schedule, we need to get a building permit in 4 months. We did do our work to try and get the building department on board with that, and we weren't able to deliver on that. So we had at least a 4-month delay on the building permit, but the CLT panels were built to meet the schedule. So we had to figure out a way to store it. And again, they came to me and was like, this is going to be expensive, but quickly we were able to pivot the discussion to just how cheaply can we deal with this, and we ended up just keeping them on site at the manufacturing facility, because that really helps you in terms of if there's any water leakage or anything. You're just like, I haven't even taken responsibility for them yet.
Want to talk about the vented dryers, or? move on?
I think we'll skip that for now.
Okay, I'll be teaser for next time. Okay, so next theme, solution-oriented and risk management. So because we were able to bring everybody at the table, we ended up, through our very extensive, long design period, to have a 90% CD energy model that was not passing. And we had the model in front of us, and I went with the team to say, look, team, this is where we are. This is how much we need to make up. These are all the options that I think are here for us. What do we want to do? And again, that decision-making, collectively, just went really fast and really smooth to get us back to compliance, get the design certification at the beginning of construction, and then move on from there. I want to spend a tiny bit more time on the passive house commissioning requirements. So I should have said ventilation commissioning requirements per se. We still hadn't finished designing our mechanical system, but I think probably week 3 or week 4, we issued this is what it means to have a ventilation system commissioned to passive house. And the mechanical contractor, as well as the installer, took that on board and just embraced that and said, if this is what I have to deliver and if this is what I'm being judged on, I'm going to be proactive. And this is what they did, which again blew my mind, right? Because we had so much time, so much luxury of, none of that. They said, we started as the energy modeler to have a contingency in the energy model. It goes too fast to get hit at the very last minute when you commission, just before you hand over the keys. So we were just holding a bit of extra space. You tell me you're designing here, commissioning is not an exact science. I'm going to hold there and just have a bit of breathing room. However, the mechanical installer said, you know what? I'm not willing to wait until the end to see if that works. I'm going to give you a ventilation mock-up, and we're going to start testing the ducts in the factory. And I was like, wait, what? Nobody has ever done that for me. That's it. You win all the points. And then we ended up testing, of course, in situ, in the building, to make sure that it would all go okay. And spoiler alert, it went really well. I'll show you a couple of, actually, I'll just go past, I'll go back and forth. This is some of the factory ventilation leak detection approach, right? And they've actually found some leaks and decided it's not working, we're not delivering what we want, we're going to adjust a few things. And they also kept us, I want to say, in check with the energy model, that I was like, okay, I'm holding all of that for you. How do you feel if I hold half? And they're like, actually, no, because we tested in the factory, and I can't quite get to this figure, so please hold this for me. And as a team, let's make an effort somewhere else. And it went really, really well. So again, honestly, this trade just won my heart just there. I'm just going to say it. And finally, the air leakage budget management. So same thing, collective decision making, which are some very difficult decisions. I don't want to, say that these were really small decisions. Our 90% CD model wasn't compliant, and we decided to use air tightness as a value engineering measure. And we set a target altogether at 0.4 rather than 0.6 air changes at 50 Pascal, knowing that they could have gone technically up to 1. And so the first question was, do you have proof? Can we be successful? So RDH did bring proof to the table. You'll see that in a few slides. And then very dedicated air boss role, a lot of testing, which was start small and having a full almost a tree diagram of where we were going to go if we fail or pass and how much we want to test, and thorough site inspections, as well as, again, I'm not sure anybody had done that for me before, construction sequencing adjustment to allow us to have the luxury of doing a whole building mid-construction air test, which is sometimes not a luxury we can have. So what does that look like? Starting with the sequencing, sorry, you can totally tell this is an engineering construction schedule. Just look at the blocks. They mean you're doing something. The 2 black lines are the total construction schedule, okay? 12 months. We're not moving that, but what we got given to start with made it extremely difficult to actually see where the leaks were, because the air tightness layer would not be finished somewhere, and it would already be covered somewhere else. And we've actually worked with the contractor really hard to just shuffle things around without moving the start and the end date, to allow us to have a whole building mid-construction test, to actually see how we were doing on what we were actually judged, right? So that was, again, they won my heart right there. Then we had a lot of site inspections, as you can see, okay, looking at windows, knowing that, you know, interfaces are always like your weak points. Then doing window testing quite a lot. So instead of doing, you know, everything and then praying or seeing if it works, we really focused on the first few to get them right, change them if we needed to until we would be successful and start implementing the rest. All the way to moving into this is the mid-construction air test, which you can see most of the air barrier is present and yet accessible, which allowed us to really be super effective in leak detection and be successful.
I'm going to skip over this one just because we have time. So go into outcomes, Peter.
So I'll talk about the outcomes. So, you know, we were able, this team, like again, I felt like a big part of it was like put together this RFP and then just kind of like let things happen. Like I was watching these guys work, I'm hearing stories right now that I didn't know all the details of, okay? But it was my project, apparently. So we applied for site plan amendment and foundation permit in only 3 months from the contract award. We had conditional SPA in 4 months. Foundation permit was 10 months from the contract award, and the superstructure permit was in 14 months. So,
sorry guys, the screen is black, but listen to it. It's spoiler alert, okay? He has some good news. You just need to listen. So far.
So the occupancy we got in only 16 months after the foundation permit was issued, and we were able to get 11 months after the superstructure building permit. So very quick turnaround. The total cost for the construction contract, and I do have, like, when the slide comes up, it will say excludes servicing, site remediation, parking, and final change orders, because this was a phase 2 project, but it was about $420,000 per unit. The mid-construction whole building air tightness test was a number I had never seen before, 0.08 air changes at the mid-construction point, which was just unheard of. And then... But then when they were done, they all drop, right? But this one only went to 0.12.
Well,
so
Peter, that's 50% worse.
It is 50% worse. But you were targeting zero, like to certify we needed one air change, right?
Yeah.
And you were targeting 0.4 and hoping to get 0.6, and we ended up at 0.12. So, I mean, I would say when I look at the building, it is designed to be the most airtight building ever. It is a rectangle. It has very few exterior corners and all that stuff. But it just goes to show, like, they were able to hit the targets and exceed them through this process, which is pretty amazing.
And to that point, like, I know the clapping was for the contractor, and they're the one that actually made it happen. But to that point, I, decided to extend some of the kudos to the architectural team, because through their effort, they really set up the construction team for success. Okay, so that was that. Peter, I want to push you back on the pricing while we're waiting for the last slide to appear. I saw some notes in the audience saying that 420,000 per unit was good, right? What I would challenge this with is that it was the first time we did all of that together. And doing it again, we could optimize this further. Because this approach was successful, but it was still, the timing pressure was a very big risk. So what we're trying to do is de-risk everything without having the complete time to optimize to the nth degree. So maybe that's it, we do it again, and I'll see where we can get it to.
And I would say, like, being an affordable housing provider, we do try and work on durability and other things as well. So there is some optimization. And we had, like, 2 full elevators for all 6 stories, including the basement. That is something that you could cut out of the budget in a way, too. But we just felt long-term, one elevator always ends up dying. And if you have people who need a wheelchair on the 3rd floor, you kind of need that second elevator. So
I think, too, the promise of reduced costs through repetition is obvious, and I think we all have to do that. I think it's hard to almost cherry pick, for example, on this one, as it notes in the slide, the 400 whatever it is a square foot doesn't include a lot of the site stuff that was actually part of phase one. So that, these numbers you have to, always take with a grain of salt in terms of whether it's square footage numbers or cost per units, because those can, be arbitrary. But the key is that through repetition, again, of both the team and the system, you can see efficiency, and especially once we're starting to layer in prefabrication, not just of structural systems, but as we see here with HVAC, and other things that are essential to our passive house solutions, that's where the opportunity lies, for sure.
Okay, and just one more slide on the air tightness testing, because I still can't get over it. Do you see the green dot? This is where they ended up, 50% worse as the final construction test. We test a lot of buildings, as this slide can show. This is our RDH air tightness testing database. And for the mid-construction test that does not appear, this is cleared through final whole building air tightness testing. It was officially, and Peter, you don't know that, it was officially the tightest building we've ever tested at mid-construction. And this is the contractor's first passive house. So again, with a whole team approach and understanding what are the clear requirements we're being, judged on in terms of a finished product, as well as just a lot of collaboration, then it's really feasible.
Great. Okay, so I think just to try to close out here, and unfortunately, we're not going to have a lot of time for questions. Zero. We're going to go to our key takeaways, and again, we'll just sort of hit you with these quickly. The one thing, though, I did want to say too, that slide that Maureen just showed was hot off the presses, so we just got that, so we were really excited about it to see it. Similarly, we also just got some video. Again, we probably won't have time for it, but we just got occupancy. The project's at a really exciting spot just now that's sort of been well-timed for this presentation today. Anyways.
It's on there on the screen. We have a 10-year development strategy approved. We have 5 more projects that we're in pre-design. We're trying to do more things like this. Kind of next steps, crazy ideas stuff is the life cycle costing. We're trying to do some benchmarking on our buildings in terms of the embodied carbon and see where we are with that. And then the crazy ideas like super resilient off-grid buildings or net zero carbon or potentially going IPD or some other things, looking into that idea.
So from my standpoint, again, we talked about this is actually a policy prototype and a delivery prototype as much as anything, and that's what we've been working with. For us as architects, we are taking it upon ourselves to actually take on the leadership of driving the execution of these projects, and that's really important, is to make sure we actually understand how you get them not just from lines on a page or on a computer model, but actually into built form. The final thing I wanted to put out there, again, for any architects in the room, and I'm sure it does come up, we do find stigmatization of affordable housing, number one. We find stigmatization of prefabricated housing and modular housing, as well as passive housing from a designer's perspective. Oh, it's just simple boxes, and oh, it's, lots of negative things that are said about it. And I think we have to actually take that on as well in terms of driving the actual enhancement of our public realm, of our urban design, and actually really pushing the boundaries of design too within these prefabricated systems. So that's something that's not lost on us and something we're very much striving for.
And then from a consultant point, like we've been described before as the glue in some of these projects, and I think the what we bring to the as an additional layer to what they have is really translating, which means we can enable others to make tough early decisions, but this is how we bring value and we optimize the design and the cost as well. And so being successful at that role means being super clear in what you're translating and successfully transferring your knowledge to others to have a team approach, and this project just embodied it. So
that's great. Okay, we'll go to, I think we do have time for maybe our video. Again, just a couple quick fly-throughs of the building to give you a bit of the sense of context. It's not finished yet, but it has been exciting. This is just as of, I think, Thursday or Friday last week that we got some of this stuff, so I'm sure you'll see more. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but we've timed the presentation itself pretty perfectly. Of course, we're going to be around both after this presentation and happy to have and excited to have conversations with anyone and move things forward.
thank you to our speakers. That was a great presentation, a really great project to have highlighted here. So we don't have time for questions today, but if you want to go into the chat section on the app and put in your questions in there, they can go on and put some answers, and then that way everybody can see the questions and see the answers. But I'm sure one-on-one conversations are also great, so maybe do both. Just before we wrap up, just a couple housekeeping things. If you're joining us in person, please make sure you get your badge scanned when exiting the room to receive your CEU credits. And then even if you're not collecting credits, we like to scan your badge so that we know how many people attended each session and helps us with planning future events. The Passive House Canada Conference is made possible with the support of our amazing sponsors, so please go and check them out. They are also on the event app on our website, and you can see each of them downstairs. We now have a 30-minute breakout before our next block of sessions. I think it's lunch. Sorry, the script is not. It's lunch. We have our lunch session. And then I just wanted to do a plug. We have our a networking event tonight at 5 p.m., and that's going to be in the penthouse. So that should be a good one, and I hope everybody can join us for that. So thank you very much for attending.